There were fireworks on Capitol Hill Tuesday from both lawmakers and protesters as Supreme Court confirmation hearings for Judge Brett Kavanaugh got underway. Senate Democrats interrupted the proceedings several times as they tried to delay the start of the hearings, and Capitol Police arrested 70 protesters. CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford has the latest.
I welcome everyone to this confirmation hearing on the nomination of
Mr. Chairman.
Brett Kavanaugh.
Mr. Chairman.
Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley barely finished a sentence.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized to ask a question before we proceed.
You're out of order. I'll proceed.
We cannot possibly move forward.
When committee Democrats started the interruptions.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
When will we review Senator Blumenthal's motion to adjourn?
I make a very clear and simple motion to move into executive sessions.
It was a raucous first day of confirmation hearings for Judge Brett Kavanaugh, who was able to introduce his family before the protests started up again. Republicans were having none of it.
It's pretty obvious to most people going about their work today that the deranged comments actually don't have anything to do with you.
This is ridiculous. You're one of the best choices any Republican could make.
The Democrats' complaints were in part on process. The Republicans weren't turning over every document from Kavanaugh's time in the Bush administration. But they also took aim at President Trump.
Over a dozen cabinet members and senior aides to President Trump have resigned, been fired, or failed their confirmations.
There will always be an asterisk after your name.
And predicted Kavanaugh would throw out Supreme Court precedent.
Judge Kavanaugh.
After nearly 8 hours, Kavanaugh finally gave his opening statement.
I am an optimist.
And pledged to be impartial and independent.
I revere the Constitution. If confirmed to the Supreme Court, I will keep an open mind in every case. I will always strive to preserve the Constitution of the United States and the American rule of law.
Now, with the midterm elections looming, sources tell CBS News that Democrats orchestrated this strategy over the weekend. The president, in a tweet today, called it despicable. These hearings will continue tomorrow. Judge Kavanaugh will be in the hot seat as the senators give him questions directly on all the issues that they're going to say are important to the American people. Tanya? Jan Crawford, thank you. And for more on all of this, I want to bring in Katie Wellington. She worked as a law clerk to Kavanaugh on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals and was also a law clerk for Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts. Katie, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
We heard a portion of Judge Kavanaugh's opening statement where he talked about being impartial and independent. So during your clerkship, what lessons did he teach you about the law and being a judge?
So he very much cared about being an independent, fair-minded judge. And what I learned from him is you take each case as it comes to you. You read all the parties' briefs. You go and read every Supreme Court precedent that's relevant. You think really hard about the questions you want to ask the advocates at oral argument. And then, his process was to talk to the other judges on the bench who were hearing that case. And that's what he did in every single case. And so over the year that I spent with him, I really got a good sense of how he was an independent, fair-minded judge and how he really did take each case on the merits.
And Katie, is there a particular interaction with Judge Kavanaugh or a case from your clerkship that really sticks out to you?
So I think something that might be unique about Judge Kavanaugh is he really does care about all the opinions in the room, and including his law clerk's opinions. So if you disagreed with him, he very much wanted to hear that. He wanted to, talk about the different cases that you were talking about and to get all the different points of view. So over the year that I clerked with him, I did occasionally disagree with him, and he very much listened to what I had to say.
He said today in his opening remarks that he often chose clerks from varying points of view and that he had diverse clerks and many times he had many women. Would you agree with that characterization?
That's definitely true. The year that I clerked for him, actually, he had hired 4 female law clerks, which, as far as I know, is the first time any judge on the D.C. Circuit had hired 4 female law clerks. We came from all different parts of the country, and we're now pursuing all different career paths. So I think that's very much true.
Now, have you spoken with Judge Kavanaugh or anyone from the Trump administration since his nomination to the Supreme Court? And if so, what did they tell you about the kind of media attention he might be getting?
So I talked to the judge a couple weeks after his nomination, and I think he said very much the same thing that he said today, which that he was going to take a positive outlook, he was going to look on the sunny side of the mountain, and that he was simply honored to be even nominated for this position.
And there was no coaching in terms of what you were supposed to say.
No, I think something that's really come out of this process is how many people he has mentored in his time on the D.C. Circuit, different, his law clerks, people that have taken his class, and there's so many people that support his nomination.
Yeah, it came out today that he really is an educator. He's taught so many law students and law clerks. Now, as you know, you were probably watching today's hearings very carefully. 70 people were arrested for protests that occurred during Tuesday's hearing. There are still 3 more days of hearings remaining. Are any of these outbursts likely to rattle the Judge Kavanaugh that you know?
So the judge has been on the bench for over a decade. I think they said that he had been involved in over 1,000 cases, and you see a little bit of everything when you're on the bench that long. So I certainly don't expect him to be rattled by the protests if there are protests in the days that follow.
Do you think that the protesters are on the wrong, barking up the wrong tree, so to speak?
So, I think it was recognized at the hearing that protest is an important tradition in America. At the same time, I think people do want to hear from the senators, and they're certainly going to want to hear from the judge in the days that follow. So I think there has to be a balance there where we have, the people have an opportunity to hear from the judge and hear from the senators.
Right. Now, senators begin their questioning on Tuesday. They are likely to question him on a number of hot-button political issues. We know it's not going to be an easy grilling. I'm thinking of gun control and Roe v. Wade. How do you see him responding to questions involving these politically charged issues?
So, in my experience, the judge does take each case on the facts. He does take each case as it comes to him. So I would expect that he talks about his judicial philosophy and the method that he applies in every case, no matter what the issue is. And when he's on the Supreme Court, he's going to encounter a wide variety of issues, and so I think that's something that the senators are going to really want to hear from him about.
Now, there have been a number of Judge Kavanaugh's former clerks who've discussed what they believe to be his judicial philosophy, because as much as we say, every judge takes each case on its own merits, you can look back at someone's career and see an overarching philosophy. So do you think this type of open discussion on his opinions is appropriate, or do you think it could hurt him in the confirmation process?
I think that Judge Kavanaugh is a brilliant jurist. He's very independent, and I think people are going to come out of the confirmation hearings with a good sense of who he is as a judge.
All right. Katie Wellington, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.